Okay, welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about music documentaries. I'm David Lizerbram, here with my co-host,
Andrew Keatts.
and we are here with the Jokermen, sometimes referenced on this podcast, but now you get to hear them for yourself. Previously, they've never been heard anywhere. Unhearable. So you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, we were unhearable on your podcast. We were just sort of a specter looming over it. I'm Evan.
I'm Ian.
Yeah, so they have a podcast called Jokermen, which was, I guess, I don't know if there's a less cumbersome way to explain that it was previously about the mid to late career works of Bob Dylan.
That's
And
right.
now is about Lou Reed and John Cale
Indeed.
and the Velvet Underground and related things.
Indeed.
And we're going to talk about Bob Dylan. Totally on brand.
Yeah. Well, we're going right back to. I think this is like a perfect topic. The thing we're talking about. It's like such a great crash course.
It's really like a speed run of our entire
whole show,
like,
yeah.
original
Yes.
show. Yeah.
We're going to relitigate. We're going to relitigate every album, everything that Bob Dylan did from 1978 to 1989 now. So if you didn't get enough of that,
That's perfect. You know, we haven't done quite enough of that over the last 2 years and 200 episodes. So
Yeah, no,
there's
we
a little more juice in
relitigated.
a little more juice in the tank.
We would just litigate and relitigate, and now we're just relitigating because
Yeah.
that's just the nature of
revisited.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Shot of Love revisited. We think it's bad again.
Do we?
Yeah.
Wait, no.
Canonically bad.
Yeah.
I should say that we are talking about a music documentary today at some point.
Sort of.
And
I guess you could call this a music documentary.
Right.
Of all the music documentaries we have ever talked about, this one rocks the least. This one barely
all the rock
rocks
docs,
at all.
This one is probably a doc that does not rock. It's Bob Dylan. It's 1978 to 1989, both ends of the rainbow. Alternately
Fantastic
called.
title.
Oh, yes, so good. Alternately called Bob Dylan Under Review, 1978 to 1989, from the beloved Under Review documentary series. Usually we say who the director was, but there's no credited director.
Is that
which
true?
says a lot. Yeah, I could not find
Jesus.
one, like anywhere.
That's fantastic.
The narrator,
An Alan Smithy production.
Algorithmically generated.
An Alan Frost production.
Maybe Dylan did it himself. Who knows?
it is appropriate because I mean,
It's not possible, Dave.
I mean, this movie is a Wikipedia page just set to moving pictures.
Yes.
And I guess it's appropriate because you would never say that a Wikipedia page has an author. So in that case, how could a moving Wikipedia page have a director?
There you go.
Yes, it's
Good
the
point.
product of many British people and a few Americans. There's in working in perfect harmony and concert.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The narrator, I guess the closest thing to a person associated with this is the narrator, Thomas Arnold, who shows up on all of these things. When you hear his voice, you know you're about to watch a very boring affair.
Yeah, just like the most replacement level, like standard dry ass British narrator voice that you can possibly imagine.
A Thomas Arnold joint. That's what we're
That's right. Do you guys
hanging on him?
Previous to this movie, do you all, David, Ian, Evan, anybody have any experience with these Thomas Arnold joints?
Yeah.
I'm imagining it's pretty similar to mine, but indulge me. How'd that go for you?
Ian, you've watched these, right? You've watched.
I haven't.
There's
actually.
the whole. Really? There's a
no,
whole.
yeah.
First
This was the
one.
first one.
There's like a whole other one about. I isn't. What's the other one about? I forget. Is there another Dylan one?
The one I had previously watched like 5 years ago was about Bob Dylan and the band.
Right.
It sort of charts both of their careers. And it was like it came up. It was like right when I first got Amazon streaming. And it was like, oh, you watched a music documentary. Here's a bunch. And there's like 50 that come up as suggested.
Right.
And before you realize they suck, you're like, oh my God, there's a documentary about Little Feat. This is awesome. There's a documentary about Bob Dylan and the band. And then you realize that they're only barely documentaries.
I like them for what they are.
Yeah.
Stephen Hayden also really likes these. Like we all kind of like were talking about that earlier about how these characters that like you watch one of these and then you're like just thinking about these guys, these faces of just these rock critics from like the neck up, basically.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a Van Morrison one out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely watched all of this Dylan thing because there's a whole other part to it, and it's yeah, it's probably the best example of. There's things about it that are bad. Yeah, it's like, but I find it comforting somehow.
Well,
yeah, exactly. I think comfort is the main thing for me. Like, it's really is like a comfort food kind of thing, because like especially the topic for this documentary at this point, like I know like the back of my hand, you know.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it really is almost like a podcast or something. Like I put on like basketball podcasts and just
That's
hear
right. Yeah.
the names of basketball players that I'm familiar with, and I don't even really need to pay attention. It's just kind of drifting in one ear and out the other. And so in this case, you're just like hearing Clinton Halen and Robert Christgau say like knocked out loaded and the Shot of Love record and
Well, that's so funny that
Brownsville
you're saying
Girl.
that.
And it's just like, you know, I feel I feel like I'm a little bear tucked into my bed with my sleepy cap on and drinking a nice warm cup of tea.
Because what you're describing, Ian, is what is the closest you and I are ever going to get to the feeling of listening to our own podcast.
Right.
That's right.
Everybody else, they get to have like what we put into it, all the time and care and effort that we put into our show to try to make it not bad,
Listenable.
You know, we still can glean some joy from just listening to this. It's like the wire mother and the cloth mother, you know, that experiment with the monkeys. Like we
Mhm.
only get the wire one because we're the ones who have to be the cloth one, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
know what
it's
I'm saying?
exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
what more is there to say?
Right. Exactly.
No, I
I'm
mean,
coming out swinging. This is just like Jokermen podcast where I
Yeah,
say some
exactly.
fucking bullshit.
no, I mean the middle section of this is a lot like Mario Tropical Island. What's your
Right. Yeah.
Mario Sunshine?
Super Mario Sunshine.
I'm way too old to know what any of that means, so I'll just take all of your young people's word for it.
It's a game that came out like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but I came out 45 years ago.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should probably somewhat describe what this movie is. We've kind of danced around it, but yeah. So it's one of these documentaries that really is just that doesn't have the rights to almost any music. Very little footage of Bob Dylan, and there is no interviews with, of course, Bob, or really any of the collaborators who like a regular person would know. I mean, other than Sly and Robbie briefly appear.
Yes.
But
A
and
high
they're
point of the
that is
picture,
that
should
is
be
the
noted.
by far the
It's a
high
great
point.
pot.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like 2.5 hours long or something. I know because I've now watched it 3 times for this. And
Sorry.
yeah, that's fine. And yeah, it covers the 1978 to 1989 era of Bob, which, you know, the perspective the movie takes. This came out in 2008, I think, which like when I found that out also, I was like, Jesus, looks like it came out in 1995. Like it's
Really
just,
does, yes.
Yeah.
Even
It's
the
a low
computer
budge.
hardware that the guys are like talking in front of, it looks like it's from 1996.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
it was
there's
all
a-
captured and then it just sat on a shelf. I don't know.
There's
Yeah.
like somebody has a TV like perched atop their like production setup. You know, they're like it's like they use as a monitor or something. It looks ancient. It looks so old. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like 12 inches wide and like 14 inches deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for those who are not hardcore Dylan heads, this covers his beloved Christian period, as well as his beloved mid '80s period with the Knocked Out
beloved.
Loaded, and yeah, and then
Loved by us.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
and
I would
then into the Tom Petty stuff, the Dylan and the Dead, and then concludes with "Oh Mercy," which I guess, you know, for the purpose of the narrative of this movie is kind of the comeback from the low points covered in the previous 10 years.
Indeed.
Yeah. And
You know
so
what I was
anybody who
thinking
doesn't
of there-
know what the Jokermen show is, you guys also cover this period and like it a lot.
Well, we grew to like it. I mean, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
We learned
Learn
how-
to love it.
Learned
Yes.
to love it.
It's you know, they call it Stockholm syndrome in psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
The thing I was thinking of is there is another one of these. I think that's about like it starts with Under the Red Sky and goes to like Love and Theft, I think,
Okay.
something like that.
I gotta look that up because this
Anyway,
is the only one that I've seen.
yeah, I mean, there's
Seems
yeah,
like
we
kind of a lot
learned-
less meat on the bone there.
well, there is in the sense of Under the Red Sky being what it is, and then there is a
Really
lot of
good.
growth, a lot of change in those few records. But yeah, this one has a bit more of a epic scale to it. The journey that you go on, starting with Slow Train, is that the first record
Yeah.
that they talk about?
They talk a little bit about Street Legal and Ronaldo and Clara, but just as sort of like a table setting thing. They're like,
Right.
in 1978, Bob Dylan put out the critically reviled Ronaldo and Clara and the Street
No, they just
Legal
lump
album.
it in with Ronaldo and Clara. They just say Street Legal is like just kind of like they don't even go into
The companion.
It wasn't even ready.
Had nothing to do with it.
It was a time when you just didn't even talk about that record.
Didn't even talk about Street Legal, exactly.
And
Well, these guys, it's fair to say, do not have a Jokermen mindset. This movie is not enthused by most of these records.
That would be fair to say. Although certain of the talking
Sometimes,
heads, I
yeah.
think, do exhibit the tendencies of Jokerman mindset,
The
but
symptoms.
most of them do not. And I think whoever the creative engine was behind this, the apparently nameless director behind the curtain, doesn't really seem to be on the level.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
yeah, it looks like one of those alien conspiracy documentaries or something
Yeah.
like that. All of
100%.
most of the music critics most of the talking is done by music critics on camera. It seems like they didn't know they were going to be on camera because none of them made any kind of effort, and they all look like hostage videos basically in terms
It reminds
of
me.
the
It
setup
reminds me
and
of
everything.
the type of documentary you would watch in like a 7th grade social studies class when like the
Right.
teacher's sick. That's like Hong Kong life as a territory or something like that, and but the topic is Bob Dylan's middle career.
Yeah, it does feel like a historical documentary, more so than a music one, a little bit. It's just kind of recounting the facts of like the sales for this record not being very strong. It was a disappointment, and Dylan had to regroup and find a new strategy for the next album. He was disappointed by the results. Everyone thought this one was going to be a big hit and bring him back. A lot of people were starting to question if he was ever good. So that's most of what it is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just that cycle for about 7 or 8 albums over the course of, like you said, David, 2.5 hours.
The Allied powers were in a tight spot.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So all right, let's rather than just dunking on this movie, which is fun.
I do agree though that there's something comforting about it. That you're just hearing them
it's a
talk
good-
about a thing that you
yeah,
like a lot, and it's chock
exactly.
full of information, right?
I really think it's a good movie. I think it's a good movie. Like
I agree.
no
I think it's a
irony or
good
anything.
movie.
Like, it's good. It's a good movie. Some of the takes, some of the characters in there, maybe
That's
not
fun.
my
That's what
favorites,
makes
but
it fun.
overall, exactly. I think I enjoy watching this. As sick as that might sound.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, on that note, let's talk about some characters or some bits that kind of jump out, from the morass of the
Are we gonna?
the reviled '80s Dylan.
Do you want to go like chronologically, or
More or
are there
less.
just okay?
Alphabetically, whatever you prefer.
More or less
Well,
chronologically, but feel free to
right off
move
the
around.
bat, I think towards the beginning of the movie, and he kind of comes back again and again. But he's certainly the strongest presence towards the beginning. The Dark Prince himself, Clinton Halen,
Right. Yeah.
who listeners of our program might know that we've expressed some thoughts on Mr. Halen and his approach towards Bob over the time of our show. And to be frank, he comes off in like a way more positive light to me in this movie. And maybe it's just seeing him counterposed against a couple of the other guys at the interview. One of them in particular, who I really, not my cup of tea. But I think like he for the most, like the sour kind of bitter flavor that a lot of his biography, kind of takes on when he's on a written page. Like it's not really here for the most part, and he
It's
actually has
more
some pretty
nuanced.
good, some nuanced, some solid takes and stuff on stuff. Beginning with the Christian stuff, like there was one, I forget the line exactly, but this is coming on the heels of like the interview with Chris Gow, who I did write this quote down verbatim because it makes me so angry every time I hear it. He says the songs are of medium quality on Slow Train Coming, as if it's like a microwave setting. Like the songs are low
they're
quality,
on medium.
medium quality. Bob
Well,
just
that's
pressed
a
the
guy
medium button for that
grades
one.
stuff on a like a teacher, like
Yeah.
C.
Yeah,
A.
literally assigns them
He's like
alphabetical grades.
he's the type to review a record and write like you know, decent effort, but see me after class. Like
Yeah.
we need like, or like I'm a little
You're not living
disappointed.
up to our expectations.
Yeah, he's like gonna do like
apparently
a
we've all heard that.
teacher conference with
Yeah,
you.
have your parents sign this report card and bring it back to school.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Clinton,
Have the Zimmerman sign this.
yeah, exactly. Halen does say at one point there at the beginning, on the heels of Christgau, about the Christian stuff, that Christian Bob is the same guy that 65 Bob was, and the spirit I think that he was writing "It's All Right, Ma" in is the same spirit that he uses when he's talking about I think he says "When He Returns" or something like that.
Yeah, but he says a really corny thing about it. He's like the same in 1966 and 65 he was dividing people into the hip and the
hip and the
unhip. And then in 1980 he's dividing into the saved and the damned. It's the same thing. And it's like, was he really dividing people from the hip to the unhip, or was he just like, I mean, I don't think that was his mission. It's not like that was his goal. It does give a little bit of a sense of that bitterness toward Dylan.
I mean, Ballad of a Thin Man is kind of that, right?
It is
kind of that. But,
but
you know,
it's not
like Bob was setting out to write his songs, deciding anyone who likes this, I'm going to think they're hip. Anyone who doesn't, I'm going to think they're unhip. Halen is bloviating, obviously, but it just all of this is to say, like, I had a more positive kind of experience.
Oh yeah, they do love. There's certain clips that they love. Did you notice there's a word that they use like 1,000,000 times in this documentary?
Yes.
Like, you know,
tub thumping.
Yeah.
Tub thumping.
Yes, that. Go back and watch this. I think I counted 5 or 6 different people using that term. Only during the religious period. It must be a British thing. I mean, I know it from the Chumbawamba song that we all know.
I was going to say,
what does it mean?
I think tub thumping is like, I'm not sure what the etymology.
Is it with born again? Is it about a baptism?
Yeah, that sounds right. But I mean, I don't know.
I've completely made that up. I don't.
They just do.
I don't know. One would refer to a person who's preachy as a tub thumper, I guess, or tub thumping.
Expressing opinions in a loud and violent or dramatic manner. You know who's tub thumping? He's every fucking critic in this entire movie.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
They're just all like, he's tub thumping. He's tub thumping. Dylan's tub thumping right now.
Yeah, I have in my notes, British critics really like to say tub thumping.
Yeah, they're thumping on that tub just to
projection.
Talk about. It's projection. Yeah, it's tub thump projection. There's I don't know what else is like a thing that is repeated a lot in the documentary.
I mean, the first third, or maybe even first sixth or something, is they are like overwhelmingly proud of this. What was going on here is just a rerun. It's just an echo of the of what happened when he went electric.
Right.
Every person takes their turn making that point.
Well, we
having
did
the same
too.
insight.
Yeah,
we also took our turn doing that. I mean,
it's true.
You didn't use the word tub thumping, I hope, but
no, but in so many words, I think that was like the sort of like, oh, I've come up with an interesting take on the Christian Dylan years, but it's because there is something to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about the Christian years, and you see this more because it does seem like most folks in this movie are relatively positive on Slow Train as far as it goes, you know, critically speaking. But like as soon as we hit Saved and into Shot of Love, like everyone is basically just dumping all over those records, and I do think that, like, you know, if to the extent that our show has any sort of redeeming value, it's like. It's sort of like fighting back against this exact kind of received wisdom, basically. Like this is the text that we, kind of set out to define ourselves against from the very beginning. This kind of shit, these kind of guys, these kind of takes. Because as Saved is never going to be Blonde on Blonde or Blood on the Tracks or anything, but like to just spend 20 minutes and 6 different talking heads, spend that much time with 6 different talking heads saying like, oh, this record sucks, all these songs suck, and he's being Christian and that sucks. Like, come on, like, do we need to hear, like, who needs to hear that at this point? It's really kind of a frustrating experience after a certain point.
Crucially, though, I think the reason why it's not just that we're trying to reclaim, or we were trying to reclaim these records arbitrarily. I think that we were genuinely curious, and then I think the thing that we came to conclude about those records and about Bob Dylan's career is that something that isn't really explicitly discussed, but is hinted at in various points of this film, that the reason why those records are worth re-examining and reassessing with an actual like good faith reading is that they're made by Bob Dylan, who is like it's just not anybody. It's not just anyone made these. Like they are inherently have a thing on all of them that is going to be that's worthy of interest. And
there's an inherent value based on the author himself.
And it's not just that he's like we like him so much, it's that he's a singular talent, and it does just it manifests in ways that aren't always obvious, but it is on all of those records.
Totally.
Yeah, so no one really has much nice to say about Saved, especially. They really reserve their harshest words for Saved. I don't, Evan, did you know that or either of you guys know the name of that critic that you pulled his
Mueller.
Oh, that guy.
Andrew Mueller.
Andrew Mueller. Okay.
He
Yeah,
has
that
some
guy.
good things
Vile
to say.
and despicable Australian man.
Well, he's got a few. He was really mean to Saved, to my friend Saved. But you know who had good things to say about Saved was I don't remember his name. The producer who was there, or was he? Or was it Shot of Love that I was?
That's Shot of Love. I was going to
You're
talk
thinking
about
Shot of
that.
Love, yeah.
No,
Plotkin.
Mueller.
We'll get to
Mueller
Plotkin.
really.
Yeah.
Mueller.
But no, that guy,
First of all,
producer,
I have to
Chuck
I have to-
Plotkin is his name.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
cool.
He
He's
was
great.
awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Really good.
I just want to point out about Mueller. Although I disagree with everything he says, I have to cop that I think I owned that shirt in 1995. So,
Wow.
so he and I are, maybe simpatico.
Well, he was wearing it in 2008.
Yeah, I had long since donated it or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well,
He's really just like central casting, like Gen X bad attitude shithead. Like if you were trying to conjure that person and their affect and their opinions and stuff in your own mind, just like, snap them into 3 dimensions and being like, that's the fucking guy that comes out of your brain.
Yeah, it's like if Ethan Hawke before Sunset or Sunrise or whatever was like Australian and like in a real bad mood and talking about Bob Dylan.
A couple of quotes.
Wearing a
couple
similar
of
shirt.
Yeah, a couple of a really excellent shirt. A couple of quotes from him from that piece was he says he turned into the people he spent his life mocking, and he calls the album. I think this was about Saved. Yeah, hard work to listen to and like chewing on oatmeal with no milk on it. It's just such a weird image.
Terrible.
Just
it's also not right.
Man.
That's.
I don't know. Yeah, I just like I don't know how you can listen. I don't know how you can listen to an album that has "Pressing On" and "What Can I Do for You" on it,
and the title track is
and
so
the title
fun.
track and "Solid Rock" and just like I don't know. I mean, I know that like there is a sort of quote unquote contrarian angle to everything that we've done up until now, but like it's just like listening to this shit with the like ears and the viewpoint that I have, like it sounds just as good as Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands at this point. There's no question.
Yeah,
just as good. I mean, it sounds just as it's just as interesting to
honestly
us.
Pressing On, yes.
Pressing On sounds
sure.
just as good as just about anything to me. Yeah.
And the live version of "What Can I Do for You" with that harp
with
solo,
the harmonica,
Oh, they do a lot of the lamenting that the wrong track of "What Can I Do for You" was used. Right?
Whatever.
Yeah, they seem very harsh on the lyrics in particular on that song. There's even Harry, our Twitter friend Harry Hugh, posted like a screenshot of like this like long tracking shot of literally just the lyrics on the screen, because that's what they have to resort to put visually on here, because there's no officially licensed anything. It's just a picture of a document, and they're very unhappy with Bob's honestly pretty wizened and introspective kind of lyrics. At this point.
Wizened?
Yeah,
I don't think
Wizened.
that's the right word. Is it?
It's okay.
He's
Doesn't that just
old
mean
and
like
wise.
shriveled? Okay, I just thought it was like a kind of like just looks old.
Okay,
Well,
wise.
So I'll say
Wise.
about Chuck Plotkin, the producer of Shot of Love. His stuff there, in like the hands of a director who was trying to make like a slick documentary. Like the material he has there, his stories about the making of that album are exactly the type of like grade A fare that you see in like the Tom Petty doc when you've got Petty making like Damn the Torpedoes, and there's like original footage of it. All that's missing is any sort of compelling footage, but his stories about what they did while they were making it, him sort of like realizing the mic wasn't set up and the lyrics were about to come and he has to run and hold the mic up the whole time. Like,
during Every Grain of Sand.
Yeah,
the
that's like
demo
the best part.
version that has the dog barking on it.
Yeah,
I don't know that necessarily is that same version, but it is fun to imagine. I don't think a dog was hanging out in the studio.
Oh, maybe it wasn't that version. Okay,
I would doubt it, but it's in that same world.
He comes off very winning. Yeah, he tells about how like he ran over with the microphone and held it in front of, like, he was the human mic stand, and he says that's the most important thing I did in the entire production of the album, which is like maybe a little false humility, but still,
I don't know.
It's a very charming story.
I thought that he was actually being really genuine. Like, I thought that exact thing that he said showed that he like totally gets it, because he recognizes like that is like a majorly important song, and he did catch that. And so I guess maybe you're right. It implies that it was for the final version of that song, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's him being really humble and just being like, I helped create this the conditions for this really important song to be put out into the world. And I think that's like the right attitude for someone working with Dylan as a creative partner. And I don't think he's the only one. There's another guy,
the mustache dude.
Yeah,
the mustache. I like that guy.
He's awesome.
He's really cool too.
He's maybe wins the documentary.
He really seems to get it, and like he actually kind of shit talks the people who come into Dylan's orbit, who think that it's an opportunity to like boost themselves up and have this like goofy and like totally wrong-headed approach to impressing Dylan. Yeah.
The unremarked on aspect of the Plotkin story, which I agree is amazing and like probably the high point of this whole thing, is that Bob is basically just like apparently Mr. Magoo in the recording studio and just like walking around completely blind with no indication whatsoever that he cares about any of the stuff that he's doing being recorded to tape or turning into an actual song that anyone can listen to, or even sounding as good as it could. Like any other person on the planet, you could just be like, hey dude, wait 30 seconds while I just go get a mic and hook it up to this stand, and then you can go. And this one motherfucker, just you gotta run over there, get on your knees and stick a mic right up in his mouth, or else it's gonna be all completely lost to history. It's and you know what, honestly, he deserves it. Bob of course he's Bob, so I have no ill will against that. It's just it's a very
how much brain power, like how much energy can you put toward, I don't know, details like knowing where anything is when you're thinking on that level as a songwriter,
I wonder if he's like that when he's working with iron. It seems very dangerous. You need to know, like, things need to be plugged in right or whatever.
He probably has he goes into iron welding mode and then he's fine. But
does he have a guy who's like holding the torch and hoping?
Yeah,
when he's painting, he just mixes up the paints and starts whacking his brush across the air, and someone else just has to get a canvas in front of him,
has to
or else
ricochet the paint onto the canvas. He's walking around his like metal working shop, and there's just like molten lead like pouring down that he's narrowly missing. Like he's walking under a ladder that like falls over, and like he just miraculously never gets hurt. It's like Mr. Bean.
Where's that documentary? You know, one thing we talk about with tons of with all these documentaries, one thing we talk about is you kind of get what you get, especially with historical stuff. But you know, you're making a documentary, like you have certain content or whatever, and then it is what it is, right? So for this documentary, let's assume, you know, good faith on the part of the filmmakers, and what they were able to get basically was interviews with these eloquent critics, and interviews with a very small number of actual musicians who were involved, name musicians, and mostly with you know, producers, maybe a studio engineer, people like that. So the movie just kind of takes that. You know, the two things we get are the critics who are saying like, well, this could have been a masterpiece, but there's a lot of that, and then you get the studio types who, like, all they want to talk about is their experience, which was, again, chasing Bob around hoping to avoid disaster with a microphone. And you kind of feel like that's all that there is in this era, and that's the only thing to think about.
Well, what I wrote in my notes after the Plotkin story, and specifically after this part where he's like, his like eyes are flaring wildly, just like reminiscing about the recording tech that they were using, and like what a wild man Bob Dylan was, and how, you know, how he just felt like he had to be there to catch him when he fell or whatever, is like, is this movie better or worse if it's just a podcast? Like if this is just like
a podcast.
Yeah.
That's what we're coming to. It's a podcast. It's literally if we just took this footage of us on Zoom or whatever and edited it into
honestly, when I
film.
because I watched this movie twice now, because I watched it a month ago when we were going to record this initially, and then I just watched it the other day for this session. And I do remember the first time I watched it, I was like in bed on my iPad, and I got like kind of sleepy at, in the middle, like second, third or something, because it really is fucking long. And I just closed my eyes, and I was awake the whole time. But like, I got 100% of what you got to get out of this movie just with my eyes closed.
You know, I was walking around just listening to it. It is a podcast. Like, you don't need to be watching it. So
it's. I mean, it's like you think about something like the good old Grateful Dead cast. Like that's basically what this is.
Sure,
it's just like stories from the studio. You know?
Yeah. And on that note, just the two kind of poles of the talking heads that you get here, either the Chris Gows and the Halens,
who's
or
the bald
plot
fella?
The bald guy. I think he was an engineer or a studio musician or something.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, I feel like all of the studio guys, the engineers and the players and stuff are like, just cut Halen, cut Chris Gow, cut all the critics. Just give me the studio guys, like the guys that were flies on the wall playing guitar on a track that never even ended up, coming out. Those guys have the best takes and the best, kind of insight into whatever's going on here.
Yeah, the
just
best
like
stories, the best
people who were there in the room, and got a flavor of what it was like to be doing this kind of stuff.
That's true. It would be like a good hour and 20-minute movie if you just had that.
Yeah.
We need a fan cut.
Exactly.
There's a lot of these moments where those guys say stuff that is like the most. It just feels the most informed and genuine about like what was really happening creatively. Where they'll say like, we were working on Brownsville Girl, and it seemed like it would be Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. Like, this is our opportunity to be on like a legendary epic Dylan track that's like 11 minutes long or whatever. And they said that like, it felt like that while they were doing it. And then he was honest enough to say like it didn't end up that way, and like it was kind of like ruined basically by all this extra stuff, which of course, Ian, I know you don't feel that way, but
certainly not. It was made into a masterpiece with all the extra stuff,
right? I mean,
all the horns.
It is interesting to just hear like the other side of like what that might have been like, how these things changed in real time sometimes. And there's a great story there of him just like going off into a corner and writing a whole verse, and they're like, "Oh, wow, he can do that."
Yeah.
One thing that I think it's when they're talking about Knocked Out Loaded, or those sessions, talks about all these different musicians coming in, like on every song, every day, different musicians. And maybe the engineer says, you get a guy come in and it would be like, oh yeah, I'm a drummer, and Bob and I were hanging out at the club last night, and Bob said he wanted me to play on this. And I'm just thinking like, wait, hold on. What club is Bob Dylan hanging out at? Like, who is he just talking to? He famously hardly ever talks to anybody. Is he just like chatting with a guy at a club and it turns out he plays drums? Or like, what are the circumstances? Like, that's the one I wanted to track down. If I could track down, like, get a little bit more juice out of one story, I feel like there's
Well,
something there.
There's a whole story of him and his drummer from the '94 era, Winston Watson, which is basically that. Like it total like really not very uh not like a hardcore session like warrior type of guy. He's just a pretty good drummer, and Dylan just liked him, and he ended up on the tour and like was there for a while. And there's that crazy story. Who told us that, Ian, about like him being, was it, I think John Worster said like on his first time playing with Dylan, they like set up this like tiny toy drum kit or
Yeah,
something,
Right,
and
right.
like
Yeah.
it was just like a testing ground. Like there's this weird informality to like that spontaneity that leads Dylan to just waltz into a studio and start singing with someone having to like do a fucking like slide to like get him
A Bruce
on the
Springsteen
mic.
type
Yeah.
slide.
Right.
That's the same attitude that he brings to like who he wants to be playing with sometimes, I guess. Just like
I do feel like this documentary and these kind of characters are like uniquely well suited for each other, like this moment in time. Cause like you think about anything that's happened in the last 20, 25 years, 30 years in Bob's career, and like everyone is just like locked down, like, you know, Pentagon level, top secret kind of shit about what's going on. Like the mystery between who actually played on the Shadow Kingdom songs and who was appearing in the video and to what extent, you know, the people who were there live in the video shoot actually had any sort of music behind them, or like when we had Kean Nugent on for the Slain episode, like that crazy story he told about some massive video production that never saw the light of day, and he had to sign an NDA for and stuff like that. Like everything that's happened over these last however many decades, it's just like you don't see it, you don't speak it, you don't even acknowledge it. If you were a part of it, you were there, you're in the credits, and then the finished product comes out into the world. And these guys at this moment in time, I think clearly like that was not the attitude that was being taken towards recordings of like Shenandoah or When Did You Leave Heaven? And so you get this kind of looser, chiller, kind of hangier vibe of apparently Bob hanging out in clubs, I guess, and talking to drummers and saying, you know, come down and play tomorrow. And I feel like, and I think that's one of the strengths of this movie is just like it really is a privilege to get this kind of insight into Bob Dylan and his creative process, even at this moment in time, which obviously has been widely represented as not his, not the peak of his powers. You just couldn't make this movie about Time Out of Mind or Love and Theft or, Tempest or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but-
and they also have like a standard where it's like some of the stories that really wish I could remember his name, the mustache guy, the producer on Infidels. Some of the stories he tells are like probably not good enough stories to be included in a movie, but like would be awesome stories if you sat next to that guy in a bar and he was like, yeah, I was like, I've worked with Bob Dylan. You'd
Right.
be like losing your mind. But like in any other movie, they probably don't make the cut for stuff to include. But here it's just like, well, we're just going to do a 3-minute clip of this guy just telling 2 stories in a row about something that happened in the studio with Bob. Like no editing, no cutting. There's just a guy talking for a while.
Absolutely no actual filmmaking going on whatsoever. It's just you put him in front of the camera, you press the red button, and that's it.
One of my favorite
Not even
things
color
that
correction.
he says, that I think that guy, I wish we could get his name down. 'cause I feel-
He's in my notes as mustache guy too. So sorry, mustache.
I mean, he's
guy.
got a
Yeah, at some
fantastic
point I lost
mustache.
track of all the names, unfortunately.
He said of the like sort of goings on and hoopla surrounding Empire Burlesque and this sort of grand sense of expectation that was being pumped out, and all these yes men at the record label talking up the record to Dylan. That's like a main focus for a while in the doc. He just keeps saying like that all these record executives were like, we're gonna sell the fuck out of this thing. It's gonna be like so great. We've got all the latest technology. All these like hot remix DJ people are working on it.
Right.
Not
Arthur
realizing
Baker.
that it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's the reason why people don't like it actually. He said there was all these parties where they quote were raising wine and celery and carrots and dip and stuff.
Right.
I had that saved too.
Yes,
All right, that makes me feel so
you
much
know
better.
why it was such pomp and circumstance. You know, there was wine and celery.
Those crazy celery, those cruciferous vegetable parties.
We've got that celery and that carrots. We know that this is about to be a grand
Bob's in
a
celery
red
mode.
carpet. Yeah, it's like that. You remember that like thing in The Onion? It was like like an evening to remember, like with my parents and their friends. It was like an enchanting time was had when so I came over and we played Yahtzee. It says I think Bob was disappointed that it didn't happen. It didn't end up being successful. Like they prematurely celebrated that record, which
Empire.
Yeah, it is the story of that album for sure. But now it's just like it's fun to look back on. Whereas maybe at the time of the making of this thing, it was like just sad or painful to look back on.
Yeah. Once again, Andrew Mueller, very rude about Empire Burlesque. He's talking a lot of smack about the cover and Bob's outfit and the fact that it looks very 80s and stuff and sounds very 80s.
Right.
And it's like, that's the point, dog. Like that's why that's
what
why
he's
it
trying
rocks.
to do.
Well, it's just what it
is he the one who is he the one who describes and I actually like this line, but I think he's the one who describes the album version of When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky as "Help, Dad's gone to the disco."
Yeah. I mean, they're right
like
about that. A lot of them are. I forget who says. Everybody seems to be in agreement that the original version of When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky is superior.
Yeah, the one with Little Steven.
I mean, I like the other version. I just like it's true. Like the production on it is really just what tanks it in terms of like keeping it in that world that we like to think of Dylan as existing in, of timeless music. And Mustache Guy, God help me, he really does emphasize, like he has a great line that's just like what I think it sums up a lot about what happens in this whole story. It's like, I don't like to put schmaltzy like effects and gimmicks on records that don't need it.
Right.
And
right.
I never felt like his songs needed any of that stuff. And that's just the Lord's honest truth. That's facts.
Yeah. I think he
Bob
says
Dylan
that in the
doesn't need that.
I think he says that in the context specifically of Emotionally Yours and saying like, this song didn't need to turn into what it turned into. And there were other cover versions of it. I think he's probably talking about like the OJ's version, which is amazing. And the original cuts, the very simple stuff that we've heard now on Springtime that are, it's a super strong song. But he also says like, I know people who like, this is their wedding song or something like that. And so
he says it still came through.
It
can't
exactly.
help but come through.
Yeah,
so if you want to go back and
think
about Saved a little bit from that perspective, it's like Saved is, if anything, how can you be like judging Dylan so harshly for being willing to try all these crazy production techniques, and then on the other hand also judge him so harshly for doing what you see as like a shoddy underproduced record? That's kind of the critique of Saved, actually. It seems
exactly. Empire Burlesque is a direct reaction
win.
against the critical consensus regarding Saved, which was too sloppy, too slapdash, too just in the room live cut. Like he didn't spend any time gussing it up and making it sound modern. And then when he does that he also can't win that.
It's like all we demand of Bob Dylan is the perfect balance every time. Like maybe you can just like understand that he's gonna like, you just maybe have to like cock your ear a little bit to like notice that he's better than every fucking other lyricist more often than not.
Bastards.
So
I did want to
go ahead.
because we've kind of rolled our way all the way down to the Empire Burlesque element of things. I did just really quickly want to note, and I think I heard a couple of you guys mention this also earlier, Sly and Robbie during the Infidels section, just their interviews, the presence they bring to the whole documentary, and like Robbie's fit in particular with the Puma cap and the sunglasses. They're just like, they look like Abbott and Costello together. And just like are the like chillest kind of like most pleasant vibe in a whole movie of piss and vinegar. So
R.I.P. Robbie.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever
Robbie
decided to contact them and get them in this movie, they should be accepting the Oscar.
Yeah, they were really humble.
Yeah,
well, he says
he says talking at one point and just goes, "Yeah." So anyway, Bob was great. He's a very cool guy, very good. To
exactly.
work with.
Robbie says. Cool. Robbie says that Bob said to them, "I hear you love to work. I'm going to blow you guys up." And then he goes, "He fell off at first. He couldn't keep up with us." So good. And then Slide just says, "Respect to Bob Dylan. Long live Bob Dylan."
Yeah,
So good.
respect to Bob Dylan.
Respect to Bob Dylan. I 100% agree. Respect
The
to
most
Bob
true
Dylan,
thing
long
said
live
in the
Bob
entire
Dylan.
film.
Yeah, you could tell they thought he was cool. Like
Yes,
they were just
totally.
talking about how like he was like one of the most. They basically he might even literally say he was like a cool person to work with because he just walks in with the guitar like a cowboy. Just like I feel like there's just something in Dylan's brain, like this chip that is turned off that's in most people's brains of like caring about how things appear without even knowing that you care. Just like
Yeah.
this kind of thing of like, well, I don't want to. I'm going to try to look a certain way, and I think Dylan just will never admit that he's trying to care, and so even to himself, he just like will walk into the room holding the guitar and do the thing, and it's why he's, I guess, vulnerable
That's why
to
he's Bob
these
Dylan.
type of critiques, but also why he's great.
It had me thinking of that interview that came out a couple weeks ago with Stan Lynch from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers about hanging out with Bob Dylan and
on
like,
Ray Padgett's Substack.
On Ray's Substack, yeah.
So good. The best
Yeah.
interview probably I've ever read in my entire life.
Ray's a master of those interviews.
Yeah, Ray's great.
Let's call him up.
Long
Hey,
live Ray.
Jump on. Respect to Ray Padgett.
Respect to Ray
Respect to
Padgett,
Ray
yes.
Padgett. Long
Subscribe
live
to
Ray
his
Padgett.
Substack. Come on.
So
Yeah.
I do want to mention that the length at which they critique that he was not good on "We Are the World" and that song wasn't good.
Yes.
This movie really puts its flag in the sand on that one.
There's like a long detour into fucking We Are the World, Live Aid, and Farm Aid. Just like two, and honestly, it's probably because they could get the rights to that footage.
That's actually a good
the
point,
interview with Willie, talking about Farm Aid or like the national broadcast of Live Aid and stuff like that. So I get you gotta make lemonade out of the lemons that you get. But it's definitely a little more time on that than I think was warranted.
Real Live, one of Bob's few officially released live albums, is not mentioned at all.
Completely,
No,
yeah.
it's not.
Or
Yeah.
the
Whole
84
lot of Farm
tour, exactly. Yeah,
Or-
that's not even
or,
touched on.
Yeah, no, it's
Or the
it's not.
81 tour, for that matter.
Yeah,
That is an
right.
element of this. Like they are really focused on the studio records, right? And I think that we've been over this a zillion times on our show. But Bob is not a studio musician. He doesn't give a shit about the records. He just wants to get in there, cut the
Yeah.
songs, get out, and go play it live again and again and again and again and again for people across the world. And like that, I think, is the strongest element of where he was at, certainly in like the 1979 to 84 period.
Well, speaking of,
yeah.
I mean, on that note, I mean, something that I think was interesting was that nobody seemed to give any thought to why he did. They were all baffled, it seemed, especially Chris Gow, about why he would play with the Grateful Dead, and it seemed like they had a really harsh take on that. But I think it speaks to this major misunderstanding of Dylan that everybody seems to have, which is that actually, like, the best way to think about Dylan and his studio records is in the same way people think about the Grateful Dead, but nobody does that. But that's the way it is. It's like you talk to people about the Grateful Dead's studio output, and they're like, "Yeah, but it's really about this version and that version from this year and that year." And those people get it for the Dead, but like that's how Dylan operates, and that's why he loves the Grateful Dead. Like he that's why he probably wanted to be part of that.
Exactly.
He saw a kinship there and felt a kinship because the studio records that Dylan puts out, it's just that sometimes they happen to be some of the best records ever made. But
Right.
when they're not, it's just because like he's more about the playing. There's that moment that's really poignant, I think, like basically the best moment of the documentary for me, when they're talking about the nadir of Dylan's career, when everybody was turning their back on him, and he talked to some PR person who asked him like, "Well, what do you want, Bob?" And he said, "I just want to keep doing this." And that was his answer, rather than like, "I want to play like this or that giant venue or do."
Wasn't
this
that
tour.
the hoodie? That was the hoodie, the sleeveless hoodie, and the sunglasses.
No,
interview that they
The
got
only
there,
time
wasn't
he's
it?
really interviewed, the only interview footage they have of him in the doc, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know
is
if,
that not?
if they were referencing that
I
specific
thought that
interview.
was. No, I thought that they played that interview in. I thought that quote came from that specific interview.
Oh, well, in any case, the spirit of that is what comes across, and what's important is that he just cares about doing what he does, and that's bottom line for him. He
Yeah.
sensed there's a great line of like Dylan sensed that there was an audience there that was starting to dwindle, and he still wanted an audience to be there to not pander to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the movie seems to like everybody is mystified by the Petty and the Dead tours. It's like accepted that this is Bob Dylan stumbling through the 80s. He's
Slumming it.
Yeah, he's reinvented himself 3 times, and boy, he's really lost the plot. He doesn't know what to do, so he's just latching on with the closest thing to what he was in the 70s to sort of give himself some meaning. And like it's the most first of all, I think it's wrong, but second of all, it's like the most uncharitable reading of it that you could possibly imagine. Like, there's no attention paid to the possibility that he was getting something out of this, and that there was some real musical relationship with those people, or that this was a good way to connect to the audience in a way that was more fulfilling to him, or that it revived him, as I think the record pretty much shows that it did.
Yep. Yeah,
what is you guys' takes on the Dead? I wanted to kind of pin you down because I don't think that. I mean, you guys talked about the Dylan and the Dead record, which certainly has its faults. And I think maybe one of you guys at once mentioned that you like 36 from the Vault or something. So like, where are you guys at with the Dead?
Show.
I am, I respect the Dead. I respect the Dead fan culture. I have not gone taken the Dead pill myself. I do like I have listened to like American Beauty, right, and Working Man's Dead. Those are great studio records, with some nice kind of country rock sounds from 69, 70 or whatever. But like, the whole 70s, 80s, 90s taper world, like it's not, I've only got so much time. It's
a lot of time talking about Bob Dylan.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all focused on the, intricate differences between a version of Tangled Up in Blue from 1994 versus 1976. So maybe I'll get there one day. But yeah, I came up in the whole indie rock world where like, the Grateful Dead was a bad word, basically. And the whole Pitchfork 2009 stance of just like them being the absolute pits of the pits. And so that informed a lot of my initial viewpoint, and obviously I'm well past that now, but I've never gotten back around to really diving in and getting into them. So I'll get there at some point. I don't know about you, Evan.
I really kind of only got interested because I was listening to 36 from the Vault, and I was aware of them like vaguely, and I knew some of the studio record songs that everyone knows, but I really have I have a major respect for the band, and I've actually read a lot of books about them because I think that their history is fascinating, and really just as just what I was saying a minute ago about the way that we can view Dylan, they really are similar, and I think that it's that dynamic quality that is what people get addicted to about them. Like that's why they're fascinating to watch, and they lasted as long as they did. That they lasted as long as they did is like incredible, and there's so much crazy drama under that. So like I just am so interested in them as a phenomena, and I do think Jerry Garcia is like just an incredibly great musician, and I don't know. I mean, I know a bunch of the songs basically because I've heard Stephen Hyden and his co-host Rob Mitchum talk about them like a lot, and I've listened along to those too, to a lot of the Dick's Picks, just out of curiosity, and like I don't know. I guess that's just how I feel about it. Is like I see what I think why Dylan was inspired by them, because I think they're an inspiring thing, an inspiring thing that happened.
Yeah,
Andy,
would
you say that? Oh, sorry, Andy. I just want to ask you. I'm putting you on the spot here. Would you say that you spent more of your life listening to the Grateful Dead or Bob Dylan?
Grateful Dead.
It's not even close, is it?
It's not particularly close. But I mean, I've spent a more time than most humans listening to Bob Dylan, but no, Grateful Dead.
But,
By
you
many
would
For
probably
me,
agree
it's
then-
probably For me, it's
The-
probably Bob, but with the Dead, a close second or a close third.
I think there's a similarity to like if you get really into the live stuff of Dylan, it's what's the difference between getting into the live stuff of the Dead? It's like so close, like what you end up looking for. It's like these little differences. Like we went to a bunch of Dylan shows recently. I went to like 4 Dylan shows in the span of 2 weeks, and it was like exciting every single time because every night was going to be different and had this this different energy to it. And so if you believe something about an artist, you will know that it's going to be interesting for you anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm completely like on everything that Dead fans do. I do the same exact thing about Bob. So like I'm not casting any stones at this point. Like I just totally that's the route that I've gone, and I know other people like you and
you just know that like even as a casual listener to the Dead, like there are moments. I think if you spend any time listening to their live recordings or taper recordings, like you're gonna come across something that is like transcendently amazing and great. And if you know that this band is capable of doing that, why wouldn't you go back and see when next time it's going to happen? Because it does happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's I mean, it's like when you're like I don't know, like if you're like coding or something, and you're like that the answer is there, but you can't quite get there. But like knowing that the answer exists,
yeah, exactly,
it allows you to keep doing it over and over and over again.
There's a belief, there's a faith that really, honestly, a faith in these people as artists. Like the drama of seeing Jerry sort of in his diminished state toward the end, miraculously sometimes just like pull out like a really emotionally powerful solo or vocal. And the rest of the band, like when they work together well, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's good music.
It's good rock and roll music. Yeah,
one of my
Did you guys
formative.
Go to the San Diego show, the good San Diego Dylan show?
No,
did not.
We didn't. That's one we
I was
missed.
Oakland and the 3 Los Angeles ones, and Evan was the 3 Los Angeles and Santa Barbara.
Okay. I did go to the San Diego show. It was incredible.
Did he play Friend of the Devil down there?
Highlight. What's that?
Did he play Friend of the Devil?
He did
in
not.
That one?
No.
Yeah,
I think we only saw the ones.
Yeah, and I think he just played at the one that last Oakland show that I went to, and then those 2 LA shows. That was one of the highlights of all of those shows for me. Is that he killed it on that.
It was almost a nice treat to me that after how excited I got at the possibility that he would do that he didn't.
Right.
It was like almost better. It's like thanks. It's the more Bob Dylan thing to have happened that I didn't get that.
Well, it's crazy that apparently somebody, or I don't remember where I read it, but they were in the really front row at the last Pantages show, and right before they were to play the last song, there was a little interaction, like a huddle, where Dylan said, "Grain of sand," and that was not decided until that moment. Ostensibly,
that was it. I saw that because I was there the first night that he played Friend of the Devil, the last show in Oakland, and you could see he brought Tony in, he brought Bob Britt in, and like kind of got everyone together, and it took him a second, like much longer than it normally takes them to actually get into Every Grain of Sand at the end, and then sure enough, it came out and brought the house down up here for the local Dead fans up in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Andy, what was your first Dylan show? I don't think I ever asked you that.
First Dylan show. I need to go back. It was at it was in Towson, Maryland in like 2002, 2003. Yeah. I was in late high school.
Great era.
I would have to look specifically. But I was with a bunch of friends who were really upset me by saying that he did not sound good when I was of the opinion that he sounded incredible.
Yeah.
I've been there so many times.
That's an experience that we've all had.
I encountered with a couple of my friends at the Santa Barbara show, like honestly, some kind of demon from hell after the show. This woman who was like plastered drunk, and she was saying why didn't he play Hurricane? I don't think he played. Why didn't he play the hits that he's supposed to play? And I was like, well, he's playing the new record mostly. It's a pretty good album. And I asked her, like, would you please take a photo of me and my friends in front of this sign? It would mean a lot. And she took my phone and like was fumbling with it for 10 minutes basically, and then
You picked the wrong person to take your picture.
Well, she took the picture and then she wouldn't send me the picture she took on her phone. Actually, it was on her phone, I guess. So she just had this picture that we just never got. She was just there to like test my my fan my faith, really.
Yeah. No, there was
Probably-
a guy next to me who kept leaning over loudly and saying, "When are we gonna get the honky tonk?"
They do honky tonk.
Yeah, I was like, at one point I wanted to be like, this kind of is what he.
This is the honky tonk. Yeah, he's
What do you
playing.
think of
To be alone with you.
Yeah.
The most hate I've ever been surrounded by, I think, in my life was I went to the first weekend of Old Chella or whatever it was called.
yeah,
Desert Trip.
Trip.
And
yeah.
so the
shirtless Bob, an iconic look and an
just
iconic
blazer.
Just
So the first
blazer
night-
prancing around.
well, we couldn't see anything because Bob, unlike everybody else, did not make use of the screens, of course. So
Yes.
like the entire Bob Dylan set, you couldn't see anything. It was just like grainy footage of like 1940s city streets, like on, but like a 3-minute loop repeating, like regardless of
that.
what song. It was
That's
great.
beautiful.
But like it was like 100,000 angry people waiting for the Rolling Stones, and then me. Like feeling like this is great, more of this. And it was like being at a Trump rally or something. It was just like an evil crowd of
it sounds
of anger.
like a very evil crowd. I mean, that was kind of the Santa Barbara crowd a little bit. It was like it was just like a big it was mud with sticks in it, just a lot of sticks in a row. But it was good. I mean, it was great. It was great. These hogs didn't know what they were getting.
All right, we're drifting too far from the shore here.
Yeah.
Well said.
Do we have any other? Are there any other points anyone would like to make about this film? The both
just
ends
wanna
of
give
the rainbow.
Do want to give a brief shout out to he only makes a very brief appearance, I think towards like the like 70% mark or something. I don't even have his name, but he's the ISIS magazine guy. RIP ISIS. Bob's fan mag just shut down after I think 37 years this
really?
past week.
What? Damn.
Yeah,
Because of Brexit.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that
No, really. He
Oh,
posted
actually?
a whole thing. Yeah, tariffs
God.
have changed because of Brexit, and the mail's all screwed up. And
Oh,
he,
Jesus.
like, there was this long explanation of how like it costs them this much more to ship things, and yeah. So really, it is.
Wow.
The,
Well, maybe if
the-
they would have
the-
kept Boris around.
First, we
he
got the
could have,
British critics missing all of Dylan's good stuff in the '80s. Now we've got Brexit. It's just Britain versus Dylan all over
To
again.
their credit, they do all love Jokerman. They all say
They
good
do all
things
love-
about
but-
Jokerman.
But almost like begrudgingly. They all feel very gracious that they're acknowledging that of course Jokerman
they're
is a
patting
great song.
themselves on the back. But Clinton Halen, to his credit, also has some great calls. Not to give all these. I mean, not to like say that they have. It's nothing but bad takes, because like there's moments when he's saying like his list of songs that he's like, well, obviously there's some great songs like Caribbean Wind and Jokerman and Groom Still Waiting at the Altar. It's like, oh wow, you really are.
He knows his shit.
I mean, he does in a way have maybe the most terminal case of Jokerman mindset. It's like it's kind of unpleasant to look at sometimes, but it's because it's just, it's very advanced.
Yeah.
I love how the movie ends basically, which like they finally shift. Yeah, they get through the Dylan and the Dead phase, and everyone shits on that for a while, and then they finally talk about Oh Mercy, and it's they bill it as this like this creative reinvention. They bring a couple of the Oh Mercy like engineers in. And those guys were kind of cool, just like talking about this big Victorian. There was the one guy talking about how like Bob would just like sit in the kitchen and drink a cup of coffee and then just like start playing the guitar. And one of the other guys was talking about like how they were like they really searched for the right mic to get the right vocals, and they like the sound of a boombox sort of thing. I dug that. But so Oh Mercy, this whole section of the movie is like, here it is, it's the end. It's a happy ending. Bob comes back and he puts out Oh Mercy, and it's happily ever after for everyone. And then the last like 2-3 minutes, it just kind of tapers off, and they're all like, but then
It was
Under
not
the
to
Red
last.
Sky came out.
Yeah.
And actually,
it was not
it
to
wasn't a
last.
happy ending. And this next record also sucked. And that's the end of the movie. It's just like no dramatic arc to this story whatsoever. It really is like reaching the end of a Wikipedia page. You get through all of the content and stuff, and then you get down to the bottom, and it's just like the links to the different like sources, and you're like, well, I there's more to say here. There's more to read. Like, where else am I supposed to go? And just like it trails off into nothingness.
Yeah.
One thing it reminded me of
could use a nicer touch.
Is a good point that they did spend a little bit of time on is how good Rank Strangers to me is.
Mm-hmm.
The closer of Down in the Groove is actually really great, and I actually love it.
Yeah.
They
I
do-
was
Yeah,
a
they
little surprised.
They shout out Dark Eyes. People,
Yeah, they know.
I was a little surprised that none of them mentioned the omission of Series of Dreams from Oh Mercy. I would have.
Oh right, that's
I
like
would've thought that-
an old.
It seems like it would have been a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of
what
had
was he thinking?
Series
here?
of Dreams fever for a minute.
I mean, I love that song. Don't get me wrong.
It's really good.
Obviously featured heavily in one of the great HBO programs, John from Cincinnati. Of course.
Is that
Jesus,
is that true?
There's a fantastic.
This is one of Andy's
series.
bits.
This is one of my recurring bits. Sorry. This
Liking
is,
fish, liking
this is my
John from
Mario
Cincinnati.
Sunshine.
It's just a lot of bits.
Yeah, liking fish is not even like it's people are liking fish, not embarrassed about it these days.
Oh yeah,
People are out here liking
we've
fish.
reclaimed that ground, man.
It's true.
Uh,
I'm not
yes,
saying I'm one of them, but
the most important moment of the show, John from Cincinnati, it occurs in a montage over Series of Dreams.
Wow.
that's cool.
I gotta watch
Probably
John
on YouTube.
from
You can pull
Cincinnati
that
now.
up, I'm sure. You're gonna have to slog through 8 rough hours to get to that montage, but the payoff is big.
Takes place in San Diego. We love it. It's fabulous. Yeah, I mean, the movie just kind of tapers off. Like you said, it doesn't really have that much of a structure. It's again kind of what they found. There are a couple of one thing we do talk about in talking about documentaries is are there actual musical performances, like live performances that kind of pop out? There's a few brief performances of Bob Dylan, and that's kind of like when you're reminded, like, why do we care?
Right.
Why are we having this conversation?
The theme
get
song
Bob-
to the Jokermen podcast, the Letterman
that's right.
performance.
Yeah, you get the Letterman thing.
That's great. You get Bob on Saturday Night Live doing a little bit of Serve Somebody. I
weird
noted that
live version of Most of the Time
Yeah.
from the video.
Yeah, from the music video,
Yeah.
the worst version of
Technically
that
like a
song
live
imaginable.
version. It's not
God.
actually. It's kind of just it's good in its weird way. Like his vocal is so. I don't know. I'll go to the mat a little bit for how like weirdly, grossly passionate it is.
You a big Jesse Dillon fan?
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah,
and I guess we didn't really talk about the Traveling Wilburys stuff. I'm not really sure how much there is to add there. That was like, I mean, for me, like that was kind of the first time that I was really aware of Bob, and was into what he was doing was then. So for me, that's like huge, and people do still bring that up. But I think it's again just kind of treated in the movie as like one of these amusing little side projects that he did.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you already have the Traveling Wilburys section of the Petty Doc, which is incredible,
So
should
good.
really be cut out to be its own standalone movie. This part just does not hold a candle to it.
Yeah, they kind of just like jam it in there in the last like 15-20 minutes or something and spend 2-3 minutes talking about it.
Yeah.
It's not as important as Farm Aid or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the Traveling Wilburys is it's a heartwarming story of friendship and making millions of dollars, millions, just making obscene money for just a weekend with the boys. It's really the beautiful dream. It is if they all died in a plane crash as the Traveling Wilburys, it would have been okay.
They would have all died happy.
Yeah.
They died doing what they love, flying in a
They'd
private
be
plane.
happier. I think
Doing
cocaine.
as things have carried on, I think everybody involved would have been happier than
Well, except for Bob.
except for Bob, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Bob would hate to
definitely.
die. Bob is going to hate when he dies because he wants to never do that. He wants to just keep
We're not
playing.
supposed to talk about that.
Yeah, well, he's probably going to not do it because it seems like he's really
Just
putting
don't
it
do
off.
that. Long live Bob Dylan.
Yeah, seriously.
Imagine the Traveling Wilburys celery and carrot budget. It must have been just astonishing.
Just astronomical. They probably had a whole little celery farm, carrot farm.
They had deli meats, they had sliced cheeses, they had fancy crackers.
We're talking
they had
about
those little
tons of
mini
dip.
bottles of champagne. Yeah, tons of sour cream and onion dip. They had they had the 7-layer dip. They had it all.
They had it all.
They had it all. The Traveling Wilburys catering story.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've tub thumped enough about this film. We always ask at the end, if somebody's not particularly a big fan of, let's say, Bob Dylan or British music critics being up their own ass,
You've come to the wrong podcast.
yeah, it's no, but like, would you recommend this film, like as a movie? Like, hey, I want to watch something tonight.
Yes.
You know, yeah, okay, just not even a question. Yes, all right,
Yeah,
make your
yes.
case, Evan.
What have I been doing? You know, that's what we're here to do. We're here to say it's it's a good movie. It's good. Anything where they do, you know, they to quote Warren Zevon talking about Bob Dylan, reluctantly, I have to admit that some of these people invented our job, podcaster.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but not every audience member for a movie is going to be.
This is a film for everyone, for your mom, for your dad, for your no,
fun
God,
for the whole
no.
family.
It's not for the whole family. It's for maybe watch this with your cousin. I don't know.
If you have gotten to this point in this podcast, I recommend this movie to you.
Yes.
Whoever is hearing me say this, but anyone else, like your friends, your family, your girlfriend, your dog, no.
Your girlfriend, your dog, you know, your girlfriend, your dog.
This is an AirPods kind of viewing experience for you. It's not a movie on the big screen.
This is something you should watch in shame by yourself.
Exactly.
Like on a private browser or something.
Watch in pleasure with yourself. Get a snifter of fine brandy and make sure that those pestering loved ones are not around, so you can have an intimate evening with Clinton Haley.
Get your celery, get your carrots.
Get your raise wine and celery and carrots. That's like the funniest part of the whole thing. They would raise wine and have, you know, carrot, celery dip, stuff like big high roller record executive kind of stuff.
That's what being a rock and roller is all about.
Yeah,
Andy,
and Dylan really thought it was going to be a big hit because they broke out that celery, that dip.
Andy, does this get your Rock Docs recommendation? We never call it. That's the first time I've ever said that. I'm never going to say it again. So, you know.
Oh, the RDR, that classic thing.
The beloved RDR. Oh, did we lose you? Okay, perfect.
What?
Love it. Wonderful. Andy's audio.
He loves it so much that
Andy's audio went out. So Andy just
he can't even
gesture.
He can't even express how much he loves it.
He says this movie gets 2 thumbs up. That's incredible. Yeah. Andy, love it. He says it's better than White Men Can't Jump. It's better than Fish. Come on. It's better than anything Andy loves. It's better than California Burritos. Better than 3 stars.
Ian put down 3 stars on a sticky note. I second that. This is a 3-star documentary because you know, most things that you watch, how many times do they say Under the Red Sky? How many times do they say Knocked Out Loaded? How many times do they say Down in the Groove?
Tub thumping.
0. You know, tub thumping. Few. In this one, they say that stuff pretty often.
I'm going to say that I would recommend almost any movie we've reviewed on this podcast series to a random civilian before I'd recommend this. But, you know, if you're really into this particular thing, then it is a thing that you would probably enjoy, I guess. I don't know. Is that a Luke? I don't know. Is that a half-assed?
I'd say you took some notes from Clinton Halen on your review of this film.
I'd say if you're thinking about watching it, you need to think, am I hip or am I unhip? Am I saved or am I damned?
Yeah, do you want to be saved or do you want to be damned? Exactly. And
you got to watch it to find out. So, you know,
there's no other way to know.
Therein lies the rub.
There ain't no middle ground, as Bob said.
Yeah, there ain't no neutral ground.
Ain't no neutral ground, yes.
In honor of my late co-host, Andy, who enjoyed this so much that he killed himself. I will
No, he's still
thank
there.
you. No, he's still there. He just, he's miming his way through a podcast. I'm going to thank Ian and Evan from Jokermen. Anything you want to plug or promote other than your, I guess, Jokermen podcast?
Nothing other
listen-
than that. No.
Yeah, listen to Jokerman podcast. Subscribe on Patreon. We don't plug that enough on our own show, so we'll plug it on yours. We have a Patreon, and you should pay us money to listen to fully half of the podcasts that we're releasing at this point. All the good ones we're saving for Patreon. We just had a great one on John Cale, Church of Anthrax, and the Academy in Peril come out
Yeah.
today.
It's about John Cale and Lou Reed now. So if you like them, or if you want to know more about that, that's what we're talking about this way.
I'll say I was previously pretty deep into Lou Reed, but John Cale I'd only really heard Paris and Fear or whatever, a couple of the big ones, and
Sure.
I'm now just plowing through them, and boy, he is great. So thank you for
Good
that.
stuff. Hell
He's
yeah.
awesome. Okay, well, this has been another episode of Rock Docs. Thanks a lot to the Jokermen for doing this, and check out the film and enjoy yourself, and let us know what you think. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having us. That was fun. I just talked a lot, so I had a great time.
That's what we expected.